Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Rob Boll, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. He'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Today, I'm here with a couple of colleagues from Evoke to talk about the big squeeze. This is part of a series of podcasts we're running, talking about the challenges with the big squeeze. Businesses are currently facing issues around the same points of inflation, prices increasing, supply chain issues, and also recruitment, retaining and attracting the best staff. So we're going to talk a little bit today about systems and processes and whether we can give some advice between the three of us on how to get more out of your processes and systems, how to improve them, how to see if they're actually fit for purpose. So I'm joined by two colleagues, as I said, Nick and Dave, both commercial directors within the team at Evoke. So welcome both. Great to have you here today. Going to kick off with you, Dave. I know you've worked with a number of SME companies and seen the good, the bad, and the things that need improving. To me, processes and systems develop over time, and there's often a drift, isn't there, between what a business needs now, what it started with, and what it's ended up with. So thoughts around what you've seen and where businesses can improve these things?
Absolutely. I think every business starts small and then grows. And so processes are put in place at the smaller scale. And as the business grows, as the number of customers increases, there's always going to be a crunch point where how you do things needs to change and needs to improve. And sometimes that's forced upon you because a system breaks or it just can't cope with the volume. But it's never a bad thing to always think about how you do things and take that step back and actually look at your processes, map your processes. How do your teams interact if you've got a larger team? How do your departments interact? How do you interact with customers? And just look for those pinch points where the process starts to break down and you can improve things, speed things up. And anything that you can do that can improve productivity is going to be a good thing and usually doesn't cost any money.
So I know you mentioned mapping there. I think process mapping is a great starting point, looking at what's happening in any process system, and you can do it big picture. You can do it for this bit over here that seems to not be working, and then join them all together if need be. But I think it's a great starting point. Nick, what is your thoughts on where these things are probably overcomplicated or not doing justice for what the business needs?
I completely agree that processes grow organically, and often the business grows beyond the point of where the process is working. I think that's the same with management reporting. So if we assume that there is management reporting in place, there comes a point where what's being reported on by the people who've been reporting in the same way for a long period of time is not fit for purpose because it's focusing on elements that maybe have been relevant for that company 2 years beforehand, but are no longer relevant now, and therefore, the management reporting needs to be looked at to make sure that it's fit for purpose, so that it's highlighting those areas that may be working extremely well, or more importantly, highlighting those areas where perhaps efficiency has fallen away or the business is not working as it should.
No, agreed, Nick. And I think one thing linked to that, I think a lot of businesses that I come across and talk to, there's always this challenge with what is not working, what's causing headaches. Is it the people? And I think often people go, it's the people. I haven't got the right people. I need better people, different people, whatever it is. And often it's the people in the team you've got trying to do things with systems and processes that just don't work or just aren't fit for purpose. And I think if you start addressing those, then you can tell, actually, is it really the people or is it just the tools and the ways you're trying to get your people to work? And I think that's a really important thing to look at first. Don't blame the people, look at the systems and processes. And Dave, have you got any thoughts as to how businesses should start to approach that and look at, okay, how do you get things working better?
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that you're tracking the right things. So if you think back decades back, there's the old adage that the marketing director knew that half his marketing was working but didn't know which half because you couldn't track it effectively. And now we live in a data-rich environment where you can track most things. But then it's now important to make sure you track the right things. And I used to work in a business that was incredibly data rich, but you would get to the point where you had what we called analysis paralysis. You knew so much, you couldn't make sense of it all. So it's really having a deeper understanding of your business and what are those 2, 3, 4 key metrics that really impact your performance. Are you tracking them effectively? Do you have the right tools and systems to track them effectively? So then you can actually make an informed decision that's going to make an impact. And you're absolutely right, listening to the team at the sharp end, how they have to do things, how they track, how they report. If it's not working, then you've got to change it, because if you've got bad information, it's garbage in, garbage out. Bad information in gives bad decision making, and therefore nothing changes.
100% agreed. Nick, you're a data man, aren't you? If you look at a lot of data, you can never get enough bad data to cause numerous problems, right? What's your thoughts around that point, bad data in?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Dave's point about communication. So yes, the data is crucial, garbage in, garbage out, so that if the business isn't being recorded properly or isn't being recorded at all, then you've got no management information, or you've got management information that's based on erroneous entries. That's of no use to anybody. I pick up on the communication, with people. That communication is not only internal, it's also external. So I think it's, I've had situations where it's very easy for the management team to believe that, and the inefficiency or the failure to do things as well as they might be done is down to the people within certain teams, certain departments, down to certain individuals. Sometimes that's the case, but it's certainly not always the case. So if those individuals or those teams are working in time-honored fashion, but working to a process which is no longer relevant, then that's going to cause the inefficiency. And the people that know whether that's the case or not are the people in the front line, as Dave said. So there has to be communication, but it has to be active listening on behalf of the management. So they actually need to sit and listen to those at the front line and really understand what the issues might be. Similarly, externally with customers, sitting down and talking to customers and understanding why the service is appreciated, or perhaps really getting to the nub of how the service could be improved or the product could be improved is crucially important. So I'd say it's data, but it's also communication.
I think the important thing I'll add to that, Nick, is the communication has to be two-way. It's really important that the team doing the work of actually collating that data and passing it up the chain of command understand how what they're doing can have an impact. And so there's feedback from the management team that we've been tracking this metric, we've made this change, and here's the impact. So that they can see a positive impact from the work they're doing, because everyone wants to know that they're taking time to collate information and report it, that it's actually worthwhile.
I want to talk a little bit about improving things, right? So I think one of the beauties of having process and systems is you can keep looking at them, and as a team continuously try to improve them. And even if it's small changes, you can do that with a process and a system. You can't do that with we just do it on the fly, or we just everyone kind of contributes and it gets done, but it's not a process or a system that can evolve over time. So big fan on this concept of the continuous improvement, putting in place a process, then going right, week by week, month by month, how do we improve it? How do we tweak it by 1% here, 1% there, or whatever it is? Thoughts around improving things that way and how to look for those small gains?
I think there's sorry, Nick, I was just saying the master of this, I think the example that's used a lot even in business is it the Sky cycling team? And they hired this continuous improvement director who looked at everything from the shape of the pedals, the pillows the riders took to bed with them each night, the diet, you name it, every little thing. And it was all about that, as you say, the incremental improvement and making small changes that can have a big impact. And we look at the power of one, don't we, Robin, with businesses? But I think it's also important that you don't change too much at the same time, because then you lose the insight into what's made the difference. So yes, incremental improvements and continuous improvements, but don't change it all at once.
Dick, I know we're obviously both sailors. You've got a few sailing pitches in the background. I think when you're yacht racing or doing any kind of racing, if you just go ahead and change everything at once, you've got no idea what actually improved the boat speed or what's going to make the business go faster. And I think it's a classic thing, isn't it? Small incremental changes that you can measure the impact is how you make that boat go faster or go better. And the same.
Oh, completely right. Yeah, I mean, over a period of 3-4 hours, seconds count.
Yeah.
And they, that then magnifies into positions, and the difference between first and second can come down to seconds regularly, which, until you start focusing on those things and thinking, right, okay, so actually let's look at, the difference was 15 or 20 seconds on adjusted time over a 4-hour period. What could have constituted to that 15-second difference? And when you sit down and start thinking about it, you actually end up with quite a long list.
Yeah,
longer than perhaps is comfortable at times. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's a good analogy. And then once you've got that list, you don't have to tackle everything at once. Hopefully, it's not every aspect of what you're doing that's a problem. But if you've got a list of things which you could improve, then just taking one of them could actually make that 15-second difference and be the difference, between first and second.
Yeah, no, I'm just understood. One of the things I was going to touch on as well is I mentioned at the beginning of this about recruitment, retaining and attracting staff. That I think one of the big challenges at the moment is people needing to recruit, potentially spending more money on salaries than they've ever spent before for certain roles. Getting that person or people up to speed and adding value quicker is going to help, because you obviously got to recoup that loss in salary and getting someone up to speed, potentially recruitment fees as well. And I think this really shows the importance of good process, good systems, right? If you have a good set of process and systems that someone can come in, pick up and start using, and then understand how they can contribute to improving it, then you're going to have a much better return on that investment in that person or that team, because you're bringing them into something where they can actually pick things up and start running straight away. The number of companies that have none of this stuff documented or consistent, but you get companies with different teams doing the same thing, whether it's a design practice, architect practice, whatever it is. You could have a team over here doing something a completely different way to a team over here, and you think, what's the point in that? Because at some point people are going to have to make decisions. Is that a more profitable project? Is that more profitable? How did that go better than that? But if you're not putting processes inconsistently, you're never going to be able to compare like for like and understand, okay, what went wrong there, what was good there, and how do we learn from that? I don't know if you got any thoughts around that, Nick. You've obviously worked in a range of businesses around just the importance in every way of having these systems in place that work well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to have stakeholders, within any project in any business. So there has to be a clear outcome, a clear direction, and there has to be, stakeholders which recognise their place in that project. But yeah, completely. Things need to be kept on track, and actually, decisions need to be made in a timely fashion. Otherwise, the project is not going to succeed. And often, I'm sure we've all experienced it. Projects get underway, and actually, the decision maker, the ultimate decision maker, may be known. But actually the decision makers, underneath the ultimate decision makers who have responsibility to keep the momentum going aren't always obvious to everybody else. And that's where things start to break down. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the important word that you mentioned there, Rob, was documentation. And I think, you find as smaller businesses grow, you get to another pinch point where you have to take out of the head of the owner or the founder or the two partners, take some of the process out of their heads and put it down on paper so that other people can follow along and replicate. And as you say, when you hire somebody, and that really can be quite a traumatic period, because these people have lived and breathed their business. They get to a certain point, and taking the time out to then document it and almost really give the process to other people. It's an element of trust. You're saying, well, I've always done this, but now you're going to do it, and this is how I do it. And it's like handing the baton on in a relay race to allow the business to grow. But it's absolutely essential. If you can't unlock that knowledge, then it's critical. It can be a critical point of failure. And I always say to people, what you've got to remember is nobody is indispensable. And if one person leaves the business or has a illness or whatever, if the business can't survive without them, then you've got to fall back on process.
Yeah, 100%. What do you reckon the test is if you've got it right? If you're running a business, then you might think to yourself, we've got all this, we know what we're doing, there must be something else. It is our people, definitely is. What do you think is the test? How do you know that you've got this right or not?
I'll give you an example from an agency business I was working with last year, where founder, owner, growing the business, and he had 3 key managers beneath him managing the 3 separate teams in the business. And the critical test for him when things started to go well was he went on holiday for a couple of weeks and didn't get a single phone call saying, how do we do this? Or what do you think about that? Because they put in, with my help, of course, they put in the processes and the training so that, he was no longer essential to the day-to-day. Absolutely important there for the growth of the business and winning new customers and the strategy and everything else. But the day-to-day operations could function without him. Whereas up until that point, he was the pinch point. The decision-making process all went through him, and things were always slow because he was so busy doing different things. They couldn't get anything done. So he went on holiday and he came back and he said to me, do you know, I had the best holiday for years because no one bothered me. It's a bit redundant. I thought, job done.
Yeah, that's great. I actually was talking to someone the other week, actually, who was talking about the management team, and I was always trying to judge, have they got it right? Is it in place? And they mentioned they're going on a holiday just before Christmas, and they were going Galapagos and some other places, and I was thinking, well, that's quite a lot to fit in. I said, how long are you going for? 10 days, 2 weeks? He said, no, a month. And I was like, okay, yeah, you've nailed it. You've got it sorted. Yeah. Nick, any thoughts? How do you judge if you've got it right?
Actually, I was going to approach it a slightly different way. I think that there's always scope for improvement. Outsourcing certain functions to entities who have experience within that specific sector, working for a bunch of other companies, is often an extremely good way of looking at things differently. So, marketing, for instance, quite often within SMEs, founders have a very clear idea, a little bit like Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, where the founder of the business has a very clear idea about what he wants to create, what he wants to deliver, and it's typically delivering what he likes to deliver. Even if the business is working, there are always ways of improving it and getting that external perspective of what others are doing in that sector who may have got it even more right and maybe even more successful, having scaled their business to a multiple of the size of the particular business that the founder's running. That's often invaluable, and it's very difficult. It's wood for the trees. It's very difficult to get that perspective when you're immersed in your own business.
100%. That external perspective, and whether that's getting someone in to help, or whether it's just mixing with other business owners and figuring out what others are doing. Perfect opportunity to judge, have you got this right, by comparing to others. I couldn't agree more. The kind of stuff I would love to talk to anyone about, because through all the things that I do, that's what I encourage them to do. Talk to others, talk to us, get that external insight. Just gonna briefly, we're running out of time for this podcast. Any last remaining thoughts, Dave? Top tip, if anyone was listening to this thinking, can I improve something here, what would you suggest they do?
I think it's understanding your own business, looking where are the problems now, why is it a problem, and looking at the processes around and the systems that interact with that problem, and can you solve it? Can you improve things? And small, as we said already, small incremental changes. And a lot of times it's around new things that you're doing. I always think about, I taught myself to juggle years ago, and I remember reading the theory about it. It's like when you start a new skill, it's a conscious incompetence where you know what you're trying to do, but you're crap at it. And then you move to conscious competence where you can do it, but you've got to really think about it. And eventually you get to conscious incompetence where you just do it because it's natural. Walking, talking, cycling, etc. becomes a natural thing. Business is the same. You're doing something new, you're trying hard to get it right. And then when you get it right, you've got to focus to keep on getting it right. And eventually that process, that skill, that system will become embedded in your business and become natural, and will carry on from there. So yeah, it's looking for those areas where you can move from conscious competence to conscious incompetence, conscious competence, not conscious incompetence, unconscious competence.
Thanks, Dave. Perfect. And our next podcast, I'm going to get you juggling as well, just to show. Nick, any final points, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm following on from that. I think, there's always going to be, regardless of how well the business is doing, there's always going to be a part of the business which could probably run that little bit better, run a little bit more efficiently. And actually, sometimes, parts of the business, if they run a little bit more efficiently, can have a fairly dramatic impact upon the business as a whole. So yeah, I think it's coming back to your yacht racing analogy, Rob. It's looking for the seconds that actually over a long period of time actually count a lot more than one would think they might do.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Dave. Look, I really enjoyed the chat today, and look forward to talking again soon. So thank you both. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.